first two stages of the Honeysuckle waterfront redevelopment proposal are expected to create 700 jobs over 5 years. Included in the plans are restaurants, cafes, retail outlets and a facelift for Newcastle's harbourfront, all accessible to the public.
Well, they'll have full access, and actually they've never had it before. I mean, it's only now that they're gaining that full access, and it'll be a perfectly landscaped walkway all the way down the harbour, eventually from Nobbies through to Carrington.
A development application was presented to Newcastle Council last night, boasting 75 serviced and 142 residential apartments ranging from studios to 3-bedroom. A 200-space public car park is also earmarked for the western end of the 3.7 hectare site.
Where the square about is, we're proposing to remove the southern and the western legs of that and take that parkland, increase the parkland and integrate it into the garden and open space, bringing back publicly accessible land.
Plans will be on public exhibition for 28 days from Monday. Stephen Mount, NBN News.
There's only one bout standing between Chad Bennett and a world title fight. Next Friday night in Newcastle, he'll face Indonesian champion Ferry Wirawan in a world title eliminator. The winner will be ranked #1 contender for James Hare's world welterweight belt.
I can't wait. I've trained very hard and just looking forward to getting the show over and done with, and looking forward to maybe a world title shot after that.
Bennett has been sweating it out at the Marrickville gym of three-time world champion Jeff Fennick.
We're just trying to really sharpen him up now and get his mind set, because he's done all the training and now it's a mental game. As long as he believes that he's done everything he has to do in preparation, hopefully the fight will become easy for him.
Bennett is confident of beating his Indonesian opponent.
I know that I can. I'm very confident this bout. It's going to be a very hard fight. He's a very, very good fighter. But I'm looking forward to the challenge, and at the end of the day I'll be giving 110%.
As long as he wants to work hard, I think Chet can go a long way.
Also on the card next Friday night at the Newcastle Workers Club is former NBN News reporter David McElwain, who's gone from sparring with politicians to the real thing.
Whenever you get in the ring, there's usually someone better on the other side and you cop a couple.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
A family outing on Mother's Day 2001 turned to tragedy when a Commodore being driven by then-teenager Dale Murray ran out of control and into three pedestrians on Aubrey Street. 52-year-old Robin Perry was killed, her daughter Deborah Davis suffered severe injuries, while her daughter Courtney was also hurt. Dale Murray is facing charges of aggravated dangerous driving causing death and causing grievous bodily harm, and has pleaded not guilty under the Mental Health Act. In a videotaped interview recorded shortly after the accident and played to the court today, he recounted the moments leading up to the crash, claiming a motorbike had been tailgating him and he'd been speeding up and slowing down. "I just remember coming over, seeing them, swerving and braking." He denied he'd been travelling at speed, but crash investigator Sergeant Gerard Lawson told the court scuff marks on the road indicated the car had been travelling at 102 kilometres an hour in the 50k zone, although he couldn't confirm the speed at the time of impact. Judge Jonathan Williams began summing up this afternoon, reminding the jury it was no ordinary criminal trial, but a special hearing in which the evidence has been limited because of the mental state of the accused. The jury is expected to retire tomorrow. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
Home to a few head of grazing cattle, these paddocks will soon house some of the country's most daring people on two wheels. The finishing touches were put on the series of jumps to be used for the first BMX trail jam in the region.
Awesome. It's good to showcase this sport in Newcastle, finally.
A top three place getter at the X Games trials, Brett and Edgeworth's Nathan Searle usually have to travel hundreds of kilometres to compete in events like these, but hope they can help put on a show that makes this jam a permanent fixture on the calendar.
A lot of riders coming from all over the place. It's pretty important to make sure we do a good job and do it right the first time.
You'd think that'd extend to their actual landings as well. But it's all part of the sport, and when the crowd rolls in, the thrills and spills should only get bigger.
Well, the louder the crowd gets, the gnarlier you go.
Practice continues tomorrow while competition commences on Sunday. 3 games tomorrow in Newcastle Rugby League, while on Sunday the fight continues for 4th and 5th on the ladder, with Cessnock heading to Tomaree and Lakes to play Wyong. Eastern Districts have a tough task ahead to hold down 4th place in Newcastle Premier Rugby Union up against Wanderers tomorrow, while Adamstown must come up with something special against an in-form Hamilton if they're to keep pace with the front-runners in the NBN Soccer League on Sunday.
But he has his family and he has a Mother's Day every year. I'll never have that again.
It wasn't the start either side wanted, scrappy and undisciplined. Richard Hankin booting first points with a penalty. Eastern District's reply was swift. Matthew Jackson just wasn't to be stopped this close to the line. These two always enjoy physical clashes, and late in the half it turned nasty at the bottom of one ruck. Wanderers prop Tim Shaw given a spell in the bin. East's flanker Graham Clear sent for the rest of the game. His stay out of football may well be longer after it became clear why he was dismissed. Half-time was probably the best thing for the home side, who came out firing after the break, winger Clint Brown making the most of his call-up. Ever the entertainers, Easts levelled things again through a clever kick and chase. But the two Blues forwards took control. A man down, a tiring East pack were unable to keep them out. Scott Bretherton's effort looked to have sealed it. But Easts still had some life left, Tonga Tua slicing through. But the Blues got home, with Reece Hitchcock landing a double in the 20-point win.
The focus is on getting some help over to the Middle East at the moment. And the sorts of things they do with the money is they rebuild schools, they rebuild hospitals,
Usually the quiet type, Paul Perry looked anything but at Royal Ascot overnight. All top and tails, this is what gave the Newcastle trainer a smile that could last forever. Saddled with the weight of a 4-year-old in a Group 1 penalty, the 3-year-old's amazing ability to storm home in the final straight etched him into racing history, leaving 19 contenders in his wake to take out the Group 2 Kingston Stakes over 1,000 metres.
Sensational. Just a great, great thrill to be here today and do that, and one of the better thrills you'd ever have in your life, I think.
The first Australian horse to win at Royal Ascot, Schwazir returned odds of 25-1 and a staggering 37-1 on the tote, no doubt leaving bookmakers wishing they'd done their homework.
They'll love it at home. They'll be say that's a square up, yeah.
The dynamic colt's next appearance will be on Saturday, when he races in the Group 1 Golden Jubilee Stakes over 1,200. Stephen Mount, NBN News.
Workers' Union representatives led Michael Costa on his tour of the Newcastle factory where 35 Millennium trains are under construction. Morale among some of the Hunter's best tradesmen in their field has hit rock bottom after the new Sydney trains were dubbed the Millennium Bug and a Lemon. The Transport Services Minister keen to clear the air that his beef wasn't with the 270 workers.
I'm absolutely sure the workers are doing a first-class job and they shouldn't be held responsible. But it is important that we sort out the management problems that obviously exist in terms of this project.
He also believes it's time the opposition left workers alone.
I call on the opposition not to play politics with the workforce.
While EDI Rail Management participated in the tour before explaining to Michael Costa how it intends getting the Millennium train successfully on the tracks and paying for its increasing purchase price, it was left to union officials to welcome the ministerial support.
If there's anyone who's going to be able to sort this out and get it back into perspective, we believe Minister Costa's the person to do that.
The talks to thrash out a solution on the teething problems lasted at least 2 hours and were continuing this evening to fine-tune the strategy. Michael Costa won't be the last politician to inspect the EDI Cardiff plant if workers have their way. They've now called for a halt to the Millennium train debate and asked Premier Bob Carr and Opposition Leader John Brogden to inspect the plant and gain an understanding of their project. Gary Blair, NBN News.
The accident happened at this council park at Enna Bay in September 2000. Kate Bidgood broke her arm when she fell from the playground equipment. Her parents launched legal action seeking compensation for the accident, arguing the girl's injuries would have been substantially reduced if there was more cushioning wood mulch under the playground equipment. But yesterday, a court dismissed the claim. Port Stephens Council has welcomed the judgment.
It also signals a warning to the general community that if you want to pursue a claim, make sure that's a serious claim, because otherwise, rather than getting a lottery win, you could perhaps be left paying some hefty legal bills.
The court ordered the Bidgood family to pay council's legal costs, which is expected to exceed $10,000. Mayor John Nell says the case will also be welcome news to other councils across the state facing similar public liability claims.
As we believe that the courts are taking a more common sense approach to injuries and claims for damages from local councils.
Lyndall Derrig, NBN News. Only a handful of people have made the incredible journey to visit the wreck of the Titanic. Andrew Rogers is one of them. His visit came after he won a competition.
When he said you'd won a trip to see the Titanic, I thought it was a trip to see the movie.
But the trip was worth a lot more than the price of a movie ticket. In fact, a cool $65,000.
The first thing I saw was twisted chunks of metal around near the stern of the Titanic, and it was almost an emotional experience, I suppose, to see something man-made after just going down for so long in the pitch black.
Since 1912, the Titanic has remained 4,000 metres underwater.
Yeah, lots of bits and pieces lying around, lots of coal, bathtub, the giant engine boilers.
Since returning to his home in Sydney, Andrew has been researching the 6 Australians who were on board the Titanic. Evelyn Marsden was one of the nation's 3 survivors. She worked as a stewardess on the ship. Andrew says Newcastle also has a connection with the Titanic. The ship's 6th officer, James Moody, visited the city before he died when the ship sunk. He remarked, "It is a queer little place with a great idea of its own importance. However, some very nice, hospitable people live there, and I enjoyed my 4-week stay very much." And while there's plenty more stories still waiting to be uncovered from the Titanic, for now, Andrew says he's grateful just to have had the opportunity to visit it.
I forget a lot of things, but I don't think I'll forget that.
Lyndall Derrig, NBN News.
The idea of converting this Lee Wharf shed into the new home for the Newcastle Regional Maritime Museum has been 4 years in the planning. Now, a $2 million world-class showcase for our maritime past and the current-day Port of Newcastle is only months away.
But we're aiming for an open date in April of next year.
Architect Cecilia Wells and designer Tom Hewitt will bring the Maritime Centre to reality, and keeping the wharf shed's character will be important.
To get a sense of what the place really did look like at one stage. If you get rid of everything and schmick it all up, it becomes boring and dull and very plastic.
Tom Hewitt's achievements include the Bradman Museum at Barrel. He believes the Maritime Centre can succeed for 2 reasons.
So credibility, it's on the wharf, it's on the water, and it's a uniqueness. It's a fantastic, unique building.
Features for the centre include a shipwreck memorial and outdoor theatre. Gary Blair, NBN News.
The Hunter Region's 5 cycling clubs are still coming to terms with a decision that's sure to have wider ramifications. In a directive from the New South Wales Crown Solicitors, police have been instructed not to approve road racing applications unless clubs close roads to all other traffic.
You just can't do it.
Many clubs use public roads for races each weekend, and with private circuits unlikely to be found anytime soon, clubs fear they'll nosedive.
A lot of people who race will train every day. How can you continue the motivation to go and train if you can't race?
It seems the sport is another victim of a state wary of litigation, but others, especially triathlon clubs, will soon find themselves in the same boat.
It affects anybody who uses the open road for any type of event.
2 games tonight in Newcastle Rugby League, while it's back to Souths Day at Townsend tomorrow. University will test its premiership credentials against the Waratahs tomorrow in Newcastle and Hunter Rugby Union, while Hamilton and Broadmeadow highlight an interesting round in the NBN Soccer League. Jim Callanan, NBN News. It was back to Souths Day for plenty of old Lions at Townsend Oval today. The good old days may have seemed a distant memory though, as West handed out a dose of reality, starting with captain Ben Donaldson. Giving away a penalty from the kick-off, West needed just 1 tackle and good hands for try number 2, with Todd Madison crossing for a 12-0 lead. It may have looked as easy as 1, 2, 3, but Souths halfback Dan Watson was hardly laughing. Brett Cullen was. The league's most prolific try scorer chalked up 200 first-grade career tries last week, and today he trod a familiar path to the line as West rolled home. Overnight, Central Charlestown gave the Northern Blues a real fright at St John Oval. The Butcher Boys cut a swathe in both attack and defence, and soon enjoyed a good buffer over the Blues. Leo Denver sparked some life back in the Blues and they quickly responded, Adam Brown touching down not once, but twice as they got home by just 6. Sitting vulnerable in 4th position on the ladder, Lakes needed a good start. Instead, they gifted the visitors first points, with David Greenup stealing the opening try. Brett Clement's hit and spin method worked for Lakes first. While players niggled each other, the trainers were in hot water for doing much the same thing. The guys who count provided the real highlights. Jacob Briggs' solo effort landing Lakes a 10-6 lead. Daniel Spiteri answered for Cessnock with some footwork of his own. Again, Lakes replied. Tom Ryan's bust set up Jason Allen to regain the lead. While there was a question mark on the play the ball, it ended with Hugh Ryan crossing in the corner for an 18-10 lead, and that really had the goannas boiling. Halftime seemed the best thing for Cessnock. Spiteri back in the action and the scorer's book twice after the break. But Lakes saved the best till last. Brett Clement scoring the match winner right on full time, but the way things ended, these two can't wait to play each other again.
How can you say that when you've got $1.3 billion worth of extra investment and the toughest laws ever being promised to keep country communications in place in the future?
Colleagues say 43-year-old Colin Jones was an experienced and capable driver. Normally he didn't work weekends, but on Saturday night, tragedy struck while he was 3 kilometres underground. His loader overturned and trapped him. It's now been revealed the majority of Colin's right arm had already been severed below the elbow before he made the decision to cut it off.
There were only a few people in the area at the time, and each of them are to be commended for the way they treated the situation. They offered first aid straight away, did a really good job with that, stabilised him, transported him fairly quickly.
And it'd be nice to think that we could, completely eliminate accidents from the mining industry, but unfortunately we've got a long way to go yet.
And contrary to reports, Mr Jones wasn't fearful of an explosion. In fact, unions and mining management agree any explosion was extremely unlikely.
In my experience, there would be no reason to suggest an explosion will be possible.
Further inspections of the mine were carried out today and 3 separate investigations are underway. The Department of Mineral Resources says it will leave no stone unturned in its investigation. It will focus mainly on whether there was a mechanical fault with the vehicle. Mr Jones remains in a stable condition in Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital.
And I guess he's as good as you could expect. He's in positive spirit, and that's the sort of man he is. He's a true and true positive sort of person.
Lyndall Derrick, NBN News.
The Newcastle Hunter Club's gathering was akin to a council of war, directors and management vowing to fight the state government after they learned the extent of the planned raid on their poker machine turnover.
There'll be some $16 million of tax that will be going out of this region.
Clubs argue the tax would have a widespread impact on their operations. They include dearer food and drink prices, club upgrades scrapped, jobs lost, and a big number of closures.
I'll be surprised if a third of the clubs won't be closed in, say, the next 5 years.
Lake Macquarie Council also came under fire today, with some clubs to pay a poker machine and bar turnover charge under new arrangements for the lease of club sites, a situation that alarms State Club's chairman Pat Rogan.
There is just not enough money, particularly amongst those small clubs, to be able to sustain those continued demands upon their revenue.
Clubs will now rally members, sporting and community groups to oppose the state government plan, warning they simply can't afford to be silent.
If you don't speak out, then the assistance you're getting now will not be there in another couple of years. Simple as that.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
For some Port Stephens tourist operators, today was an opportunity to learn how to tap a relatively undervalued market and gain a competitive edge. A seminar encouraged business owners to provide accessible tourism for people with disabilities and over 65s, a market which makes up at least 25% of the New South Wales population.
And people with disabilities and seniors have disposable incomes they're out there to spend as well.
Bruce Cameron has researched the topic and written a kind of Lonely Planet travel book for people with access needs. He says $1.5 billion a year is injected into the industry by people with physical disabilities alone. But with baby boomers approaching retirement age, the easy access market is only going to get bigger. Australia is already considered a world leader in providing accessible tourism, resorts like O'Callaghan's at Port Stephens and the Sand-going wheelchair leading the way. But Bruce says there's always room for improvement.
There's not a quick fix, but they need to start looking to provide good access for the future market, because I believe, and the numbers are there, I think, that the requirement for good access is increasing.
Cullen Robinson, NBN News.
In one of Newcastle's most exclusive addresses, The View rules. Kim Butler, who lives on the hill, enjoys spectacular city and harbour aspects, but he claims his prized westerly outlook to the Wattagan Mountains was ruined by extensions to his neighbour's house. He wasn't informed of the works, only realising the impact when the roof trusses went up.
I rang the council and they eventually told me they didn't think that it impacted on me and they hadn't advised me.
That was more than 6 years ago. Mr Butler sued Newcastle Council for negligence in the District Court and won, but the Court of Appeal has overturned the ruling and the damages of nearly $55,000.
The effect of the ruling is that Council does not have a duty of care recognised in negligence to notify a neighbour of a proposed development application which may impinge the neighbour's view.
The ruling is significant for a property market driven by the pursuit of picturesque vistas. In essence, it means you cannot sue for a view. Kim Butler isn't convinced. He's considering his own appeal.
I haven't been